T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the launch sequence, little Star Citizen space game podcast, whatever you want to call it, where we talk about a whole bunch of Star Citizen stuff. Generally, CitizenCon just ended, like within the last 20 to 30 minutes. We have ended the Star Citizen 1.0 panel. We've also seen base building, we've seen new ships, we've seen org tools and planet tech and Starware and Squadron 42, just a whole bunch of things that we could rattle through for the next approximately 40 seconds, but instead we're going to spread it out over an hour and talk about more of the details. With me today is Casablack, well-known roadmap watcher and an encyclopedia of what's being worked on in Star Citizen, and I'm actually really interested to hear what you have been following with Star Citizen that maybe did or did not get mentioned throughout this convention. But just to kick things off, first, please let the folks know what kind of content you make and where they can find it.
Yes, I'm Casablack Gaming. I basically I do follow the roadmap pretty closely. I run a spreadsheet behind the scenes just to be able to track things, just for my own knowledge. And I basically, whenever they make changes, I'm closely following not only what they tell us and their nice little promo that they put out there, but also the things they don't tell us. A lot of times you can see things not being worked on, stopped, whatever. So I let people know those changes, not necessarily the ones that are highlights. And I also do other things such as, loadouts and things like that I'm known for. But I basically am someone who likes to create guides and just help new players and old alike. So, and also discuss the game that we all are here to love. So.
And what's the channel name people should look for?
Casablack Gaming.
Cool.
That's on YouTube, and I'm also pretty heavy on Twitter too. People can usually find me spouting off nonsense there.
Man, and there's a whole bunch of nonsense on Twitter, so stick to the Star Citizen themed one.
I have not really looked much today, but I haven't had time, but I'm sure.
So with CitizenCon over, what are your immediate thoughts right off the bat?
So I want to say first off that basically yesterday and today, I purposely didn't do a watch party with anyone else because I like to kind of take everything in, just like I do ISCs. I take everything in without seeing any kind of outside influences. So basically anything that I say today is going to be without having anyone else's sway over anything, except a little bit last night where I was watching Astropub and they were talking about people being disappointed in the 2-year thing for 2026. But other than that, I pretty much anything I say is going to be just what I think. So yesterday was, I think it was a letdown for many people. Not necessarily for me so much, except that I was excited for today. Today was the day that all along is what I was looking for. And after watching today, it's one of those things where you just seen so many good things, and I really haven't processed everything I've seen. I've basically am still, usually I'll go talk to my wife about it afterward. She didn't watch this morning because she was still asleep. It was pretty early, but so I'll talk to her and I'll probably form some better opinions and gauge what she thinks as well. But I haven't got to do that yet. So right now I'm kind of super positive about things, even though I know the things that we've seen are not going to be, we're not going to see those things for who knows how long.
Yeah.
But I'm pleasantly surprised about some things. I like you, I thought we would hear about a few other things. Even though there weren't necessarily panels for them, I was hoping we'd still maybe catch some things like scanning and other things like that. But, other than being let down by a few things like that, that are on the roadmap, but they just didn't talk about, I'm feeling pretty good about things.
Dude, I'm like you. Mrs. Tomato helps me to expand my opinions on the things. It helps a lot to have somebody who can either be grounded or more excited. And y'all might be surprised. Mrs. Tomato is a lot of times more excited for things than I am, and helps me to find my joy. As
as you recently have lost it, people have said, yeah, I've seen that stuff. Yeah.
So where would you put this CitizenCon compared to some of the others you've seen, calling out specific years?
last year, I don't know. I felt like last year I walked away from that one feeling like they were on the ball with the things that they talked about, and we were going to see those things. And for the majority of it, we have. We've in the last year we've seen so much come out. This time, especially yesterday, they didn't give any dates. The only thing Jared said today was that we would see, I guess, crafting or base building or both in the next year. So that gives me some hope there. But the lack of dates this year has kind of like really thrown me, even if the dates are kind of BS sometimes. Last year felt better. The year before that one, I think that was my first. I think this is my third one now. So the year before that one was the last one they kind of did. I guess the lockdown CitizenCon, and that one was kind of boring and a lot. But you know, so yeah, I did like this one. Just I felt like last year was just a little bit more direct. You know.
So you would say even if there are no, or even if there are dates and they're not going to be specifically accurate, it still gives a little bit of a better feel.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, in the stuff they showed off last year, a lot of it really looked done. Some of the stuff this year didn't necessarily look done. You could tell a lot of it was mock-up, so that can be a problem too. And you can't. People get excited about mock-ups, and I've tried to not, because they're getting really good with mock-ups. I will say that.
Yeah, that's a good first thing. So instead of diving into a specific panel, let's talk about the things that they showed and how they showed them. Some stuff was shown in slides, some was concept, some was screenshots, some of it was like cinematics. And then there was this interesting style that we saw a lot that was gray box, but it was very pretty gray box. And it was like almost like a mocked up sort of marketing gray box. What do you take from that? Do you think that it's still at the same stage you would expect for gray box? Or do you think it was made to look a little bit better just for the videos?
I mean, I've learned that I've through the ships and the process with those, I've learned that gray box isn't necessarily, there's still months left, possibly. I mean, 6 months even, maybe even a year. So, and like I said, their stuff's getting really good with what they're showing. I mean, we saw that with the last year's ISCs. The last few months, we've seen some really good mock-ups of things. And so, I mean, it's really hard to trust it. They kind of told on themselves too with the presentation yesterday, because they were when they showed the sandworm, they initially showed like kind of that gray box look, and then they jumped into live. They showed a live thing of it, and you could tell the difference. And so because they did that, you kind of are aware of it and you're ready to look for it now. And so I was a little bit surprised today though, because when they showed the Star Lancer, I was like, I know it. I was pretty sure it was supposed to be straight to flyable. But then they started off with the mock-ups or whatever, and I was like, well, is it not? And then of course, it is, but still.
The Terrapin. There was a Terrapin.
Yeah, I know. At first I was like, Anvil, because it's hard to keep track. There was so many leaks this past month. I couldn't keep track of what I had seen and what, even before CitizenCon, I was like, what are all the ships that are supposed to be coming? And I completely forgot about the medical Terrapin possibly being one.
Yeah, that's an impressive one. Let's go back to the sandworm you mentioned there. So this is a callback to 2016, probably the biggest meme in terms of when do we actually get these features from Star Citizen kind of thing. And I feel like almost a point of pride for them to come in and try and finally tackle. But like you said, there were some discrepancies with how it was shown. And even though they showed a video of it in gameplay on Pyro, on Monox, I believe it was, Chris also then at the end of the show said base building and monster hunting coming within 12 to 18 months. So clearly there's not the confidence that this sort of monster hunting stuff is anywhere near ready.
Right.
What do you take of that?
Yeah, the first thing I thought yesterday was, is that coming in 4.0? I didn't really think it was, but I was like, maybe they saved it and it was going to be something they slipped in for. Obviously it's not, because he did say that. I mean, it kind of a letdown that they actually showed it like it was almost in a ready state. I mean, they showed like almost a complete fight with it. Not necessarily, it's probably sped up, but they still showed the rewards. They showed how it was taken down. They showed basically the start of it, the finish of it. So it made you think that it's like a really done thing. And then once again, I think it's one of these things that it builds up the hype. And, a lot of people are kind of tired of that build up, and then we have to wait another year. So I don't know if it's really going to be another year to 18 months. That's going to be kind of rough for people.
Yeah. This was day one was, I think, a rather concept heavy day. Not in the not in the sense that it was concept images, but rather that it was a lot of talk about design and where things were going rather than showing things in the game. Day two felt just hype the whole time, from the base building to the ships we got to, again, then the Star Citizen 1.0 talk. And you said today was kind of what you were most excited about. Were you expecting the Star Citizen 1.0 talk to go the way it did? And the big question, the one that everybody's going to be asking themselves for the next God knows how many years, when do you think we would get Star Citizen 1.0 based on what they showed?
I mean, based on what they showed, it looks like it's going to be like 5 to 7 years. I mean, honestly, it's crazy. So, I mean, as far as like what we saw and what I was expecting with 1.0, I'm not let down. I thought I was going to be maybe let down, or I was kind of bracing for the worst. I like that they tackled what they consider their pillars of the, of the game, PvP, PvE, and I forgot the third one. Well, fourth is community, I know, but
Non-combative, I guess.
Oh yeah, non-combat, yeah. So I mean, I'm happy that they were definitely reaching out to all of the different branches. The PvE part of it was probably the weakest because they really went through PvP like quite a bit. The PvE portion of it was, I don't know, it didn't feel like it was as strong as the others. I mean, people count PvE as, I guess, can also be considered like mining and things like that, but they seem to be lumping that into non-combat specifically. So, but I guess there's kind of an overlap there. And they did mention overlap between all of them anyway. So, but I was happy that they did that, but they just showed so many things that are not done yet. One of the things I was thinking was at 1.0, I could see them releasing it without a super emphasis on, if it was even in game, on like scientific and exploration and things like that. And they still talked about it here like it was going to be a guild that should be part of 1.0, and none of that's in game yet. A lot of that's going to be waiting on the planet tech that we saw yesterday as well. So I guess it's just all a matter of getting those things in. It's going to be interesting to see the prioritization. I don't think a lot of those things are going to be hit on until after Squadron releases in 2026. I think that's going to be when the big push happens for this. So that's at least 2027, 2028. So you're looking at 4 to 5 years, I think.
That's hefty. And do you feel like you got a proper idea of what Star Citizen 1.0 is from that panel?
I do. I mean, it was pretty impressive as far as like what they want to organize. Again, I think that a lot of that is hard to hit in a 4 or 5 year time frame because there was just so much. I'd still need to go back and look at that overall graphic they showed. What had all the that was just craziness. Everything that's on there, considering we don't have most of those guilds in the game yet or anything like that. A lot of that gameplay is just not here yet. So I don't know. I mean, then you add on top of that, they want to have, space stations, as part of 1.0. That's crazy. I mean, so
I like that we're seeing a focus on reputation amongst a bunch of guilds. I like that, they talked about those guilds and their reputation systems will factor into your own organization, all that. I like that there will be storylines for these guilds and they will have their own mission givers. And I definitely like that they really hammered out what the game loop looks like in terms of when you factor in base building and crafting and the industry involved in the game. But I do feel like it missed some of the details that they, here's the way I look at it. This is the video that you should be able to send to people to explain to them in quite a long time. It's not like a nice 10-minute bite-sized chunk of information, but if somebody wanted to get the overall idea of what Star Citizen is launching as in terms of a game, I think that there are details that were missing from this that would have been helpful to talk about. Things like logging in, things like something my community was talking about was there was no mention of NPC crew or AI blades. And if engineering is a thing, and these larger ships are things that they're talking about to players, they're not really telling these players during the 1.0 talk that, hey, you might not be able to fly and operate this ship very well if that's what you want to do on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, the gray area there is pretty big. Like, not gonna lie. And yeah, there's so many things I know. Like the next few days, I'm just gonna be like, oh yeah, they didn't mention that. They didn't mention that. You know, and yeah, the AI blades is definitely one of those things. Maybe it's one of those things where it goes without saying. They're like, well, once the AI is in a good spot, it'll be there, because they have, we have seen some of the devs mentioning, blades here and there over the past few months. So, but as far as being worked on, it's not on the roadmap.
Do you think that there was well, actually, what did you think of the the org focused base building and space stations part of that talk?
As someone who plays MMOs a lot, small group, usually like in a small group or solo, I'm happy for the orgs that are going to get that. I definitely would love to participate in it. How much I will is still yet to be seen, because I know how I play. But I'm very excited for those types of things that are going to come into the game for sure. Even all the org tools that they announced yesterday and things, those are very great things. It also got me thinking that I would want to be in multiple orgs, because if you have an org who's specializing in one reputation, maybe I want to do mining and salvage. So I may go with another or a crafting one or whatever. So I like that they gave reasons for to be in multiple orgs. Maybe it'll finally get me out there to where I get into multiple orgs, or I'm actually better about being a member of an org and participating like I know I should. But a lot of it does not seem solo or small group friendly, which is kind of concerning for someone like me, though.
Don't want to tuck away your little base in some swamp somewhere with just a couple of players? You think you'll get ratted out by a big org?
I mean, yeah, I'm all for that, but then again, I'm also for making as much money as I can. And as you can see, the high value stuff is going to be high risk. So, there's that whole element. And then I'm not a big PvP player. So some of those things, I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. If smuggling is really a good thing, then maybe I can, sneak my way around and still get stuff as I do in other games. So we'll see.
I think the most out of left field thing in that whole talk was the shield talk in Nyx and Pyro, how they're going to have like the shield segments, and there's a limited amount of shields that can be used on a planet's surface and all of that stuff. What did you think of that whole setup?
Well, I thought they were leading to something when they jumped into the space station part of it. I thought that was going to tie in more, and it felt like they just dropped that, like that line. They just let it go, and I was just like, I'm still kind of confused about that, like how that's going to work.
It's kind of something to give purpose to the more unlawful systems, but I agree with you. I thought that what they were transitioning into was like, okay, now we're showing you one of those space stations we were talking about and how you can customize it, but it ended up being just completely player made and customized space stations, which was an interesting shift, something they've kind of teased in the past, but I really didn't think that they would dive so heavily into.
Yeah. That kind of came out of left field, because it did feel like the other thing they were talking about with the shields or whatever is like a node system that other PvP maps will be like on different MMOs. So it can change hands after every week or whatever. You earn points. I understood all of that, but I just didn't understand how that was going to. I still don't understand how it plays into player stations. Like, are player stations going to be part of? Like, are they going to be protected, or is that only for the planets that's protected? The player stations seem like they're pretty well protected if you arm them and have them built and everything. But again, there's so many questions there. I mean, I still have questions about the land claiming, and if I have a claim on a land, and then, when I sign out and I sign back in, is it going to automatically put me back on that shard? Things like that. I mean, there's so many questions still that are out there.
Do you think they have these details figured out and they just didn't have the time to say them, or are these things they still need to get around to figuring out because the gameplay is not there?
I'd like to think that their overall plan here, if they have one, is that they are announcing the big bang things here, and then they let Jared break it down in ISC. So, no, I don't know when we're going to start seeing base building in ISCs, but that's whenever the community get to start asking questions, and maybe we'll see some Star Citizen lives where those things are answered. I know that's how they usually do it, but still, they show you so many things, and there's just way more questions. So many questions now.
Yeah. How about insurance? That's something I am very glad that they touched on in detail,
Yeah.
because that's, I think, one of the biggest things that they needed to address throughout all these years: LTI
Mhm.
tokens and the money sinks and claim timers and
Yep.
all of that kind of stuff. Just
Your voice cut
summarizing
out.
that up. Oh, am I good?
Sorry. Yeah. I hear you now. Yeah, I got most of the question you said. It was funny whenever as soon as you mentioned the taxes and insurance, the crowd just groaned. And so that was hilarious. But yeah, I'm glad they did. I still want to I probably have to go back and watch it again just because I was like, um, I didn't quite get it the first time I heard through some of it. I mean, I did like that there was 3 tiers of insurance, and your personals and things like that. That makes me feel good because I hate leaving things on my ship now because I just, you never know if you're going to get them back. Um, but part of this has to be stability. I mean, you can't introduce insurance and things whenever your ships disappear, or they can crash or break down for no reason. Things that are still happening. They mentioned 90% or whatever of the claims are ships that that weren't destroyed or damaged, and I'm like, well, a lot of that is because you can just be shot out of your ship still, or it can whatever. There's all different. You get disconnected,
Yeah.
and you come back into the game. So my every time they mention things like that, my whole head went straight to just stability. We don't have the stability yet. You can't put this in until we have the stability. Almost kind of like when they introduced medical gameplay and you could still die for no reason and things.
I think that was a very good idea, splitting out insurance from warranty, and then
Mm-hmm.
saying that anything bought with real money automatically has a warranty, so that you can then say if something doesn't have a warranty, you can actually lose it, teaching people
Mm-hmm.
the idea of like permanent loss in the game is an
Yeah.
option, but there are a lot of ways to ensure that you don't deal with that if you're paying into that money sink that maintains those things.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it's like part of me hated the whole thing because, it's like you're just like, God, this is adulting. Sometimes I come to games not wanting to be an adult, and here I have to sit here and have, worry about making payments on my insurance and, warranties and everything. So part of me was kind of let down by that, but I
Yeah.
knew it was coming. So
Yeah, we gotta have something that we need to pay for, or else
yeah,
everybody's
yeah,
just
yeah,
hounding all their money. And
yeah.
I agree with you about the different levels of insurance being, and obviously this is how they're going to do account bound item payback. You'll
Mm-hmm.
just get some recipes for the items that are account bound, so you can always craft them again. You probably also get some level of warranty on them, but
Mm-hmm.
that whole idea of insuring things on the ships themselves, the components, really hits to the core of the problem people have with this game right now, in that a lot of the things that you do in this game take so long, and then you lose them to something simple. You don't want to do them again. And
Right.
that goes from riding a train to the spaceport versus just spawning on and off in your spaceship, to getting all of your items and goods back onto your spaceship to go out and run missions, versus that stuff is insured and it will be coming back if you claim all your claim your ship with that stuff. Um, I think they did a good job of nailing some of those more integral problems that people have with the flow and pacing of this game, but they didn't really touch on bed logging in and out, or the more personal details of Death of a Spaceman. Why do you think they didn't dive into those things?
I think they're still working them out. I mean, what was it? I think one of Dr. Chad's last, I think that's SCL he was on, which is one of the last shows I think they did. Um, they asked him a few questions about some of the features. I think bed logging was one of them. I also know that getting our items back. Jared asked him specifically about how we're going to get our subscriber flare items back, and he still didn't have anything to share about it. So I think those are things that they're just still muddling through. Like maybe they're still waiting to see where server meshing lands before they can work on those things. I don't know what the holdup is, but there definitely seems to be some sort of, they just don't know yet, so they can't share anything.
Think it's early then for a 1.0 explainer to come out?
Yeah, probably. I'm curious to see if the roadmap's going to change now that they've actually told us about 1.0, because that was one of the hangups earlier this year, or most of the year, was they were waiting to this. They were still planning out 1.0. Well, they seem to have it plotted. So what's being worked on? Where's your, and they may wait until February to do anything, because they may just be trying to push out 4.0 and but I don't know. I feel like there could still be some teams that are going to be assigned things that should be on the roadmap.
I'd be really interested in hearing more about how they want to handle logging on and off. There's so many different questions that come up when you talk about space station bases and base building and beds and all these things. That's an interesting topic to me.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think of Star Citizen having a main storyline?
That was interesting. I didn't see that coming. It makes sense, especially if you're going to try to tie in things. That seems to be the most logical way to do it, I think. I'm wondering how deep it's going to go. It also seems like it's adding a lot more work to do that. I don't know how. I mean, I know it won't be as involved as Squadron, but still, I mean, it could just be NPCs standing there and you're going up and talking to them. There may not be any kind of cutscenes or anything, which would probably be the smarter way to do it, because they already have so many things, so many time demanding things that they're going to be working on. I'll be curious to see how they handle it. There might be some cutscenes here and there, which should be okay too. But I definitely am a fan of whenever you go to a new game, you've got, if you want, and like they said, they emphasize that if you want to do this, you can do it, and there are rewards for doing it, and I like that as well. Even for people that know how to play, you want to become a citizen, you do it. And some of the other benefits.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're technically not a citizen then before you do the storyline? Like,
I didn't know that, but again, we haven't been playing I guess the story, so we wouldn't know that.
I thought that only citizens could have spaceships. Wasn't that a thing?
Oh, I don't know.
I thought that was a thing. I guess they said that only citizens can do the base building stuff. So there is definitely some incentive to go through that storyline, and I wonder how long it will be and what kind of stuff it requires. It's an interesting idea. I think that there's a really good it's good initiative to have something in the game that people can do that properly teaches them everything they need to know. That's not just like some little tutorial that makes you buy something and then fly up to a space station and then they're like, okay, go off and do whatever you want. People don't really know everything the game has to offer, and a storyline with missions in it can easily introduce you to just about everything the game can do in the game in a sandbox environment.
Yeah, and I mean, and as many people have pointed out, there's not really great tutorials in the game as it is, so I think that's definitely going to be the way to go for them to get people into the game and into the many features and mechanics of the game. So
Yep. And with that, we also got our first 5 star systems.
Yes.
Was that your list? Did you have any other guesses that you thought might come in?
I mean, I remember them talking about Odin a while back. So the Castor thing was definitely something I had heard Astropub talk about, even I think as early as as late as last week. So as soon as they said Castor, I was like, oh, he was right about that one. But I kept thinking Odin was one of them that they were working on at one point. So I was kind of surprised that one wasn't part of it. But
there's a lot of theories of Odin just because it's in Squadron 42, but I do think there's a lot more work that needs to go into a system for Star Citizen than Squadron 42.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Castor was a good bet, and Terra makes sense as the governmental center of everything. I was thinking possibly Magnus, but Castor makes more sense than Magnus being a high security system, and they need to get something high security in pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how long Terra will take though. Terra Prime is a very populated planet.
Yeah, that one seems like literally the last thing they're probably going to work on, because the other ones are so sparse, and even if I feel like the other two, Castor and Nyx, are probably going to be more sandbox things to do. I mean, they could also still, I guess, generate their missions and things there as well, but I do feel like they don't have to focus as hard on those because they do feel more barren and things. So but yeah, Terra seems like just an insane initiative.
Terra seems like the 1.0 launch. Like, we don't get to see Terra until 1.0 comes out, and then that's where they start. And I honestly thought that they would have it be a starting system, but it looks like from the diagrams they showed, the main storyline will start at either Hurston or Microtech, which probably means Stanton's the starting system.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, it seems like a safe bet, because I feel like I mean, even though they're showing off all these new tools, I still feel like because we have so much in Stanton now, that's probably, that's just easier for them to just stick with that as the starting place.
Yeah, more thoroughly produced and developed.
Yep.
What do you think of base building? The first looks at it that they've given us, a lot of them, actually.
I feel like it's further along than I thought it was gonna be, which I'm glad for. I mean, the crafting seems like it's, I mean, even though we saw mock-ups, it does seem like it's pretty well along. But at the same time, I feel like I guess it's tier 0 of this is going to be small and medium. I don't think we're going to see large structures yet. Possibly, maybe, I don't know, but they don't have a ship yet for that. Not in game. So even though they teased the build, that Starlancer build, that build isn't out yet. Even though I think it shows that it's probably going to be one of the ones finished in the next 12 months. So I could see like a small and medium type outpost coming first, and then once the build arrives, they'll increase, go up to large at that point. That's just a theory.
I wonder when they'll start allowing us to do base building. What they showed, it was gameplay that they showed. Again, gray box stuff, but it looked really nice as gray box. How long do you really think that, or how far along do you think they really are with that stuff? Do you think it was hanging on by nails and duct tape? Do you think that they actually have something running pretty well? What's your take?
I think if it was, if it was something that was going to come out first quarter to summer, I think there probably would have been more details. There was still some, I mean, it did look good. The menus and everything still looked pretty good. It looked easy to use, which was really good. But when they showed things like the power generators and things like that, they didn't really go and show multiple different types. They talked about it, but they didn't have it ready to show yet, like the different power sources. So, little things like that, they haven't. It doesn't seem like they've worked out yet, and maybe they even haven't worked out everything with the drone system either yet, because we didn't see a drone. So there's little things like that, but I would say probably anytime late summer to this time next year would be my guess.
And the resource extraction stuff, the most interesting thing I think that we got to see, which was just like a single slide there, was that the planets will have resources underneath the ground, and that probably factors into exploration and being able to chart these planetary surfaces and turn those in so people can buy that data and decide where they want to put their base. Is that an exciting thing to you? Is resource extraction something you're interested in?
Everything with crafting, building, all of that, even the scanning and stuff, I'm very that's 100% things that I will be doing. As soon as I saw some of those slides and the kind of work it's going to take to go into there, I was like, well, I'm probably not going to be doing FPS anymore after this stuff launches. I was like, because I'm pretty much. I mean, it seems like it's going to be a lot of work, which I'm okay with. Earning these good blueprints and everything. Maybe not so much the shipbuilding I'm excited about. I mean, but I would be excited to maybe get into that just to be able to upgrade ships or just make money enough to be able to buy them from people who do. I mean, there's just so many options there. It's really going to change the game and how people play. I mean, if I'm someone who's already thought that, hey, I may not be doing FPS anymore, there's got to be others out there who thought the same thing when they saw that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. People, the way they play the game is really going to change. I mean, Torsten could not have said it better. It's going to change the game and how people play. So 100%.
There was a video I put out where I did a bunch of polling of the community to ask people, how much are you going to want to fly a ship versus being maybe crew or an operator of some sort or something like that on a ship?
Yep.
And it was like, at that time, I think it was something like 50% of people, more than 50% of people were saying that they would spend 50% or more of their time not piloting ships. And I thought that was significant because at that time, really the only things that you could do in game were mining, bounty hunting, mercenary, cargo hauling. And two of those things require you to be in a ship piloting, bounty hunting, and mining.
Yep.
Oh, I guess some of the mining, not so much, but
Yeah.
a lot of piloting involved in those professions. And in addition to that, you have to fly yourself everywhere to do the other things. There's no
Hmm.
personnel transport beacons. There's no way to trust people to take you places. And that was before we have base building, before we have more of this in-depth org gameplay, before we have engineering, before we have all of these things that they're now talking about. And I think it really goes to show just how many people are interested in not just flying spaceships in Star Citizen, but living in space and doing things. And this feels like one of the big turning point where you really start to see just how many people are here for more than just flying spaceships.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, some of their marketing people have got to be wondering, well, what are we going to sell them? I mean, of course they could. There's, cosmetic items or things that you could definitely sell. Somebody the other day said if they sold pets, they'd probably make millions off of pets, which is true because if you can have a space dog walking around with you or on your ship, people will buy it. So, but yeah, the way players play is definitely changing. I mean, I'm excited for that alone. I know my wife is huge into playing things where she can build and stuff and crafting. So she's going to go from kind of being a casual player now to really going all in with that, because
Yep.
especially the time it's going to take. So.
Mrs. Tomato is going to be designing the interiors of all of our bases.
Yeah, that's how my wife started. I would do the building of the bases, and she would go in and do all the crazy decorating and stuff. But she's gotten to where she started doing more building too. So.
Um, Red Monster is in chat right now. Shout out to the man. He's in a couple of very good
Hey.
episodes of this podcast. He mentioned that the way we collect resources is going to change with this, obviously, with the underground resource extractions from bases. Do you think that we'll see things like ship mining change?
I don't know if they're gonna do any overhauls with that just because of the additional work, unless they have to, because they will be doing. We are getting. Which I do like. The resources are going to have different rarities now, which is all for that definitely. Um, but I don't know if things are necessarily going to change other than like whenever they add Maelstrom in more with the ship, salvaging and things. But yeah, I mean, some of that too, going back to the surface mining or, the stuff being under the surface, it did look a lot like Starfield, the way like you would go in and you scan for things and you'd find just underground. I don't know if we're actually going to see like any kind of visuals, like you probably won't be able to look at a ground and see that it is iron or whatever is going to be underground.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I think the early part of this, I think, is still going to be interesting enough to get players to want be excited about it. I would like to see it maybe get better later because I want to say years ago I heard something about they're actually being able to maybe terraform a little bit whenever you're mining, like you'll be getting stuff out of the ground yourself. So maybe that's what Red Monster was alluding to, is that could happen, but they may not need that for a 1.0 release. Like maybe that's something that comes later.
That's so I'm wondering if the prospector was originally supposed to be able to kind of bore holes into the ground, and one of the ships that we saw in the whole next 12 months thing that they're working on looked a lot like a prospector. I wouldn't be surprised if it is a different ship, but also part of me is like, what if the prospector is getting a little bit of a rework that allows for more of that kind of ground-based bore mining, and that's what they're alluding to there, kind of like how they had the Retaliator on there to show that it was getting the modularity added.
Yeah, I caught like so much going on. I did catch one ship. I know what you're talking about. I really didn't get a good look at it though. But I saw the like the mining head on it, and I was like, oh, what is that? But they moved away from it.
Speaking of what you did catch, any really exciting new ships that you saw coming in?
I didn't think I was gonna want the Star Lancer, but a couple weeks ago when I was playing and I was doing cargo and doing various things, I realized that there's a gap between like Corsair and Taurus and the Hercules. I was like, there's a gap there. So along comes the Star Lancer, and it now has like close to it has over 200 SCU, and it can do the things that I was just saying that we kind of needed a middle ship there, because a Taurus and stuff. has good SCU, but it's just like the SCU has changed so much, like the storage and the size of the boxes. So it was good to see a ship come in. I feel like at the right exact time, because we literally needed something. Yeah, we literally needed something. I mean, yeah, I know they get accused of creating a problem to sell a ship, but I mean, Hercules is just a little too big for some of the places where you got to land at, especially if it's not a stationary or whatever. But then the Taurus just wasn't big enough, or the Corsair just wasn't big enough, or the MSR, especially because it has like a low roof. You could tell that some of these ships were designed before they really had the dimensions figured out for the SCU. So yeah. I wound up picking up this. I upgraded to the Star Lancer today, the big one, the Max. So for that reason, because I think that's going to fit in nicely.
And I think the Pioneer is a very good example of how many ships have been made before their gameplay, or before this game really found its legs, that now need to see redesigns. Like the Reclaimer is another one, the Starfarer is another one, the Orion's probably going to have to see something, now the Pioneer, and people are kind of dealing with that realization, and in some cases regret that their ship is going to change quite a bit just because it wasn't prepared for the game that Star Citizen became. And luckily you can do ship refunds and put that towards something else, but it's indicative of the idea that buying ships for this game with real money is a risk, because until the game is complete, you don't know how they're going to balance those ships. You don't know what kind of capabilities they might give or take away from them. Obviously they still are angled at a specific role in the game, but things change.
I was thinking too that I felt like as they were talking about the changes, the developer, I can't remember his name. I know John Crew, but the other guy, I felt like Curtis. He was I felt like he was real apologetic in his tone. Like he did not want to deliver that news. He hated to do it. He was trying to explain it to me, and he did. He explained it, and I was satisfied with it. But I'm not a Pioneer owner. However, after watching that, I kind of want to be a Pioneer owner because they have changed the ship. Now it's gonna have. I don't believe it was gonna have crafting on it before.
They didn't even say crafting at that time.
Right. So I feel like now, are they going to allow players like me who, I didn't have the chance to buy it because I wasn't a follower then, but, now that they've changed the ship though, are they going to allow people to buy it?
I think it'll be on sale at IAE. Like
that's what I was hoping.
Yeah, that seems like a good bet. Also, they got the Star Lancer in for IAE. I know you said that you were kind of expecting it just because of the things you were seeing before CitizenCon, but when it first showed up at CitizenCon, did you think that it was going to be something that we saw further down the line, maybe a new concept announcement, or were you all at all surprised that it's coming in so quickly?
I mean, because of leaks, it's like I knew it, but then I forgot it, like because they threw me off whenever they started showing the mock stuff, and so. It did throw me off at first, but then of course, it came out. But again, it was only 2 of the 3 models, which, I understand because the build's not ready yet and base building isn't in yet either. But just similar to the little ground vehicle, they only did 1 of those and not the fabrication one. So, I'm sure that one will be out whenever closer to base building because there's no reason for it to be out yet. But I was very surprised though that, even though I heard that the Star Lancer was listed, because we got sneak peeks of like that top part a few weeks back too.
Yeah.
And so we already knew there was a ship that was well through the pipeline, but still, I mean, to get 2 of them and not a concept was kind of crazy. Like I was kind of surprised. And it looks like they're going to be doing the Ironclad in the next 12 months, which I'm very excited for.
Yeah, that's surprising. And again, this comes back to new concept ships. Ironclad is fairly recent, and it's not a concept sale. It is technically part of the backlog now, but it might be coming before some other ships that could be more deserving. I was noticing a distinct lack of talk about the Vulcan in a time when they were talking about drones and like base building and stuff like that. The Vulcan was never sold as a base building ship, but it does have drones. And I was wondering, are there any cargo ships that maybe should be coming in before the Ironclad?
I mean, the Ironclad does have a lot for its size, so it is going to be bigger. It's not as big as the whole sea, but it's still, there's a medium. And that's the only reason I could think they're doing it is because of the placement. It fits between the Hercules and the Hull C. It's a different type of storage, and there could also be land vehicles coming that we don't know about that it needs to be able to transport.
True.
So that could, or something with base building. So that could be the reason. I'm not trying to make, say that, because I really hate that we're not seeing like a repair ship coming,
Yeah. Repair
and I
and
definitely
refuel.
think that deserves, yes, those things definitely deserve, especially with Pyro. I thought Pyro should have released with those ships, but here we
Agreed.
are.
And a lot of mentions in chat right now about not being any Galaxy talked about this year. A lot of people are expecting something about the Galaxy given the RSI focus. The Polaris is coming out. They put the Perseus in the concept images that we saw are getting worked on in the next 12 months, but no Galaxy. Why do you think that is?
That one baffled me, and I was wanting to go back and look. I haven't gone back and looked at the ones I did. I was like, did I miss a Galaxy, or did I, but I don't think I saw it. But other off topic real quick, something I didn't want to forget. The Kraken, right?
Yeah.
Didn't we? What was that like? I was like,
they just do that. They just throw a ship in there to get people excited.
I was like, that was mean. That was kind of like a cruel thing to do there. I mean, I know that some people have said, oh, if we, I think they actually said, at Invictus, if we can, get like the Ironclad, that's a step towards the Kraken or something. So I was like, are they trying to hint that that's what they're going to work on next? Because that was just crazy.
Maybe, but never trust the ship pipeline more than a year out because they definitely shift around.
Yeah, obviously.
One Drake ship I thought was really interesting. I don't know if it's for sure Drake, but they showed the silhouette. Looked almost like a small Corsair style ship with its wings folded up vertically. Looks really interesting.
It does. It looks like a pug Corsair or something. It looks. Yeah, I am curious about that one. See what it's
short Sair, you can call it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So in terms of new ships, we're getting the Star Lancers at IAE. We're getting the little truck thing, the Argo truck CSV. I don't know if that's in game right now, or if it's coming with I think it's with 4.0 maybe, or IAE.
I don't know. I don't know if it was straight or not. I didn't even look.
The carrying version's definitely coming out soon. The crafting version, obviously, with the drones is not ready yet.
Yeah.
And the Polaris. Wow, did the Polaris showcase look good? Holy crap, the interior of that ship is beautiful.
Yep.
I don't really care much for it. I'm
not. I'm gonna have some org fun with it, but I don't own one. So
yeah. And then they seemed to be teasing the Crusader Intrepid, but it doesn't.
Yes.
Do you think that's going to be an IAE release?
Yeah, I do. I think it'll be IAE.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll have to see.
Yeah, because I know they like to put a starter ship out there, so yeah, I could see that being.
Looks like the CSV is in game starting today.
Nice. I'm okay with the CSV. I know there might be some people who aren't, but I like that it's a little truck that can hold 4 boxes, 4 SCU. That's nice for bunkers. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how much that helps. I think 4 is good. Not amazing. It's less than the hover trolley carries that's supposed to be in hangars. So this is just so much stuff to balance, which is the real difficulty. They also, I was surprised, didn't really tell us how much progress they'd made on getting ships converted for engineering. I thought they'd at least tell us like updated figures of, hey, because 4.0 has taken so long.
Yeah.
These are the amount of ships that are going to work with engineering, and these are the ships that got updated with their components. But I guess that's still information that they'll like to release for 4.0.
Yeah, our ISCs leading up to it.
Yeah. Okay, so that kind of handles the whole second day. The first day, what was the most interesting thing to you from the first day, not including Squadron?
I liked that we were getting weather and seasons. I thought that those are big things. They were scant on details, so we don't know if that's going to be applied soon, like to Stanton, how that's going to work. I am interested in those things though, definitely. Of course the lightning was cool, the little, the sandworm of course was cool. the guild tools, the org tools and stuff, the socials tools, those were all very much needed. I mean, again, those were kind of things that, it's like kind of what we got with 323, things that are needed, not necessarily, I mean, they were cool and they're great to have, but again, it's not furthering, it's not content, like
Yeah,
gameplay content.
but
But the tools you need.
the group play, yeah, like suffers so much in this
Oh, yeah.
game. And
Yeah.
everything from getting better VoIP support to being able to put a looking for group post up in the game. Like,
Yeah.
one of my
In the chat.
one of my biggest gripes about this game, and chat's probably sick of hearing me talk about it because I've been talking about it all weekend, is how much of this game required you to go to the website to take part in it, when so many people are just not going to the webs. Like, it's really normal for people like us who are watching the roadmap, who are trying to keep up with the weekly shows, getting into the forums. But when I think of other games that I play, other video games, I played Halo for like 15 years of my life very intensely. And I went to the website actually quite a few times, but not as much as, nowhere near as much as this. Like maybe once every year, once every couple of months, I went to like check my rankings and stuff. But the idea of going to a game's website to get tutorial help, to get to answer messages from people that are in the game, to finding a guide, to finding out what kind of events are going on, is just, it doesn't happen in my opinion. And moving that kind of stuff into the game is such a huge improvement for new players and people who are just starting to get into it and don't really know exactly what to do.
Yeah. When I started playing MMOs, I got used to going outside. So now I'm pretty bad. Now when I play a new game, I automatically go outside, which kind of sucks if you're on like a first day game and you go out and there's no answers yet. And I'm just like, oh, and sometimes I don't even think to look in the game at this point because I'm just like so used to going outside. I'm not saying it's a good thing or it's right or wrong either way, but I definitely get your point with that. But again, most games have that's just where you find the best, the best answer is always outside the game usually.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that's true. You go on YouTube, you find a guide and stuff, but the just being able to find it in game is, I think, is great. And a lot of people will go into global chat and be like, hey, what's going on today? Or like, what's this event I'm hearing about? How do I get into it? And now you don't even have to ask. You can find it on the calendar, see what it is. Go to looking for group, find people to play with, party up in a chat where you're managing the players that you know right there in your hobby class. It's that's fantastic stuff. But it was all in concept.
Yeah, I know. It was just
Which
like
hurts.
you could tell it was just, it would have been nice to be able to see them navigating it instead of just being screenshots.
So what do you think of that? Do you think like Turbulent works good and they get UI stuff and networking stuff done pretty well, but do you think that's something that we could see this next year?
I hope we see that in the next year. To me, that's not something that, I mean, the team did pretty good with the, because Gabriel, he was one of them on the stage. They're talking about that stuff, and him and his team, they did pretty good with getting the stuff that we got with the Moby Glass and things. Granted,
but that was ported over from Squadron a lot.
Right. Yeah. But they still, I mean, they got it done within the year. So I'm, pretty confident they can get maybe not everything, but, maybe some of that stuff on there. But again, we still have questions too about, other things that, need to be hooked up with that as well. Because I mean, like your party markers are still messed up. So what are they doing to fix that?
Yeah.
So that's all part of that.
Yeah. Social features are like such a big thing for me. I never really cared because I was never really much of a social player, but ever since starting an org and running the org and setting up events and doing all that kind of stuff, I've realized just how
it takes so long to get an event started.
Relying
it's
on
not
Discord
easy.
for a lot of that stuff is not easy, especially now that Discord's banned in this country. It's it's so much better to be able to just do all of that in game.
Yeah, agreed.
Let's see. The weather stuff was pretty cool. We've been wondering kind of what can enforce and encourage more ground gameplay. And they talked about some of the storms that they're building that are more dynamic now, which again is another one of those 2016 features that we were wondering about. Will help to encourage people through long-term storms, through big storms, through sometimes permanent storms. Do you think that will really get ground gameplay more active, or will people just continue to try and fly through these weather
I
anomalies?
think people will definitely still try to fly through, or they just will do it not knowing any better. I mean, I I I don't know what's going to get ground gameplay going. I mean, having all these additional outposts and things might, especially if it looks like some are close enough to drive to now. But again, they're going to be adding fuel to ground vehicles, so that's going to play into things as well. I would like to see ground vehicle, uh, a better use for it. Maybe the bases will do that too. Once you have a base, maybe you're more likely to take your ground vehicles out and around to explore things, especially if you're trying to find resources. I don't know. But I don't know. I mean, I I don't know. It's kind of hard to imagine how things are going to change over the next year to year and a half. Getting crafting in, and I feel like I've been saying that for like the last 3 years. Because I feel like we've been waiting on something every year for something that's going to change. But yeah.
And that's another thing is the Planet Tech stuff they showed us was it kind of built on some of the stuff they said from last year's CitizenCon, which I think is a bit of a theme with some of the stuff from the base building to the Planet Tech stuff to Squadron 42. A lot of it kind of iterated on what we saw last year. In fact, I thought a really good comment my wife made, Mrs. Tomato, she said that it felt a little bit like a day 3 of last year's CitizenCon. The day 1 of this year, it felt almost like a continuation of the stuff they were saying, which I thought was a good point. Does it feel like it's any closer? Like these Planet Tech changes, do you think that those changes might be included in Pyro? Are they going to update Stanton with that? Or is this like, okay, this is what we're doing for Nyx going forward?
Yeah, I feel like that's what it's going. Like they're going for like they knew they had to change something to be able to get multiple systems out. Granted, they're never going to get 100 out, I don't think, but and they even kind of copped to that. But yeah, I think going forward from like Nyx, I think it's like poor Stanton is probably always going to be like the worst performing system ever. Pyro, I think, is probably going to be, up there. It'll be okay, but I think going forward with like Nyx and on, I think those systems are probably going to run better. They're going to look better. I mean, it looks like some of the things they were able to do will help benefit the others, but I think ultimately they were probably just built on stuff that would have to just totally redo to get up to par. But I don't know. We'll see.
What do you think Nyx is looking like in terms of timelines?
I would hope they're going to announce it next year, like they're next CitizenCon. They'll be like, "Yep, it's coming." I don't think we're going to hear it's coming anytime sooner than that, But
think it could come in next year.
If it did, it'd probably be like after CitizenCon, maybe. I don't know. We need to see it, being worked on a little bit. It's always those things where we'll see it teased for a good year and a half or so before it comes out, for something that big, I guess. So we start seeing it show up on ISC, and I'd feel better about a date for sure.
We did have a dev say that they'd finished their planet work on it a couple years ago. I'm guessing now that with these new tools they have, they're going back through to work on it more. But it does seem like the Planet Tech team is quite far ahead of the other teams when it comes to developing these systems. So I do wonder, what is the bulk of the work that's still needed for Nyx? Is it like factions and missions kind of stuff?
Yeah, so that'd be my guess. Like, I still feel like the mission tools, as far as trying to get them out there and like bulk, is probably one of the holdups. I think they're still developing like the templates for what the tool or for what the missions are going to be, because we're still getting new mission types or new, like we just got hauling missions. So I don't know what the next ones will be, but I do know that, at one point we will get like the V2 of bounty hunting. So those will be missions that'll take them months to get in and get working right and everything. And I'm sure once they get that in there and they get a few more different ones in there, we'll see those just easily copied over.
Would be great to have heard more about missions and what they have planned for that, especially given the kind of way they talked about it during the 1.0 panel.
Yeah, I know it's like I know there's lots of things that we just didn't hear about. Like I'm gonna be kicking myself because I know there's things I just can't think of right now. But yeah, it felt like we got some cool stuff, but just a lack of overall information, I think.
They still have that problem of introducing things and then them just not showing up anywhere else after that. Like investigation missions we saw at CitizenCon like 3 years ago, and we haven't heard a peep about them since then.
Yeah. building interiors. I mean, they kind of touched on that weird. I thought it was kind of weird they were going to bring some to Area 18 of all places. That was kind of a weird thing. But other than that, the livable interior spaces, they just dropped that off whenever they started doing persistent hangars.
Well, yeah. So this was a little debate I had with chat when they were talking about this stuff on the Beyond Pyro. I thought it was funny because it was a Beyond Pyro panel, but they went back to Stanton to talk about this.
Yeah.
It seemed like their building interiors initiative was going to be rooftops, commercial areas, residential areas, lobbies, and then underground. And from what they said in this CitizenCon, they are focusing on the underground. They're not calling them building interiors so much as they call it a specific zone. I can't remember what they called it. It's the municipality zone or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And that gives me the feeling that they are saying, okay, building interiors were a good idea, but we are focused on bases and space stations and ships and other kinds of gameplay, and maybe building out entire buildings isn't the greatest use of resources, so we're going to dedicate that time towards making these underground areas that stand as their own instance sort of dungeons that people can go into and continue to like milk for loot and activity. But it does seem like they are taking a step back from the overall idea of building interiors they presented us a couple years ago.
Yeah. I think it's a chance for them to try to test out more of their raiding system, because they, last year they also teased we may start to see a raid, like when they talked about distribution centers. So to me, it would have made more sense to do a distribution center raid than to go back and do sewers in Area 18. I don't understand going back to that. So that was definitely a weird thing.
Well, it seems like that's like on Lorville and Hurston and Microtech, they've got their distribution centers and caves and outposts. On Crusader, they've got their floating islands around the planet. And then on ArcCorp, they've got their kind of sewers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I guess if they wanted to add something just for it, because they are right. There's nothing really to do on that planet. Most people don't even choose it as their their base of operations now with your hangars, because you're going to have more to do on Hurston or Microtech. So
yeah. Let's see. We talked a little bit about how they've introduced us to our first 5 systems, but yesterday they specifically called out Castra as the 4th system. Now we all knew Nyx was coming. I think a lot of us had Castra on our short list. I think my next planet after Nyx was in between Magnus, Castra, and Terra, with me leaning more towards Terra and Castra. They ended up going with Castra for their high security system. 2-planet system, 1 landing zone, high security, fairly sparse otherwise. What do you think of this new system and the way they presented it?
I mean, they definitely just focused mainly on the Sherman station, which was fine. I would have liked to have learned a little bit more about Castra as someone who doesn't know a lot about it, like the other, like what else is going on there, if anything, or what their plans with it were. So other than this really cool looking big station, which I'm sure will be cool and a nice place to land your ship and gather some missions, why else do I want to go there? Maybe homesteading, that's a good reason. But again, they didn't really go over it. So yeah, I'm not as hyped about that. I'm more hyped about Terra, just because I know Terra's a very, huge system for the game and for the story and everything. So I am very hyped about that because I've heard of it. But Castra, just, no, nothing.
Castra will be interesting. I'm wondering if they'll be able to include any sort of Xi'an stuff, given the location of that system. Yeah. That'd be very cool. Xi'an ruins or maybe artifacts or crash ships or something like that starts to introduce the more alien aspect of the game.
Yeah, I was excited for Nyx whenever they mentioned that there could be Vandal excursions or whatever. I thought that would be interesting for sure.
They also talked about they showed Castra in that same sort of polished gray box way of showing it. Now, Nyx is unique because Levski already existed, which means that landing zone has a lot of work put into it. Do you think that Sherman has already received that much work to look like that, or do you think that was very much done up?
I mean, I think a lot of it was done up because we saw, I mean, they spent so much time just showing like the entrance of ships flying through that little gateway area there.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like something that was probably easier to mock up. I believe when they first showed the images of it, though, it looked like there was actually more buildings on top. Like it was like a little city, like a bunch of buildings on top of that station. I thought that looked pretty cool, but you didn't quite see the buildings like that as much. They did show off a few things like the hospital and, the areas around there, but yeah, I think it was definitely just mocked up heavily and nowhere near, like a good spot to where we're going to see it anytime soon.
It's introducing a new architectural style, which I think is a big thing that's going to slow it down. Is they're bringing in Henoism for that, which we don't have anywhere else in the game.
Yeah.
Nyx is kind of depending on the colonialism of Pyro, so Castra could require a lot more work in building out that library.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I want all the systems in there. I'm sure there'll be some reason to go there. And that's, I think when we get the third system in Nyx, I think having just 3 different areas to go to and reasons to go there is going to really be exciting. So yeah.
Yeah. Starware and just overall that whole panel, the specialization of items, which I guess this kind of falls in line with how they acknowledged that crafting items with different materials will make those items have different stats. They also then on day 1 talked about how the items you have will make more of a difference on what you're doing in game or what you're able to do than skill points and some kind of like a perk system, which they've talked about in the past, but did not mention at all during CitizenCon. So that's another one of those confusing points. Is that not coming for 1.0 or what? But what do you think of the equipment specialization?
I think it's going to piss people off with the not being able to fly their ship with like heavy gear and stuff. It's going to depend on how it comes out. Again, it's one of those things where we just didn't get all the information. It's also going to depend on what you're doing and what ship you're in, because if they get like that closet system they had talked about before, where you just can go up and swap your gear, like your loadouts or your builds pretty fast, then it wouldn't be such a bad thing. But if you're having to go through like we do now and change your gear just to go fly your ship, change it back whenever you get to where you want to go, whether or whatever, if it's going to be too much work, it's going to be cumbersome, and it's not going to be something people really enjoy. And we're already seeing increased time with what we're having to do, having to mess with storage boxes and freight elevators, and so you have that risk of just them adding too much work to something to make it fun. And that's the only thing that I'm really worried about with the outfit system. I love the stats. I love the specializations. I do like those things. I like that we can craft them and you get better, stats based off of those, the resources and stuff. I love all of those things. I just hope that the implementation for being able to change your gear is a lot better, because I would like to change my gear more often than I do. I just don't,
Yeah. That's another one of those things I was mentioning that takes a lot of time in the game right now, and people would like to see an alternative to that. Suit lockers should be a lot more plentiful and easy to use, and like a one button chance to equip stuff. But again, it wasn't talked about in Star Citizen 1.0. So we don't really know what their plans are there, but I agree with you.
And not every ship has, like suit lockers, unless they're going to make some of those that can go in a cargo bay that you can just bring along with you, which would be cool. But, again, no word.
But then again, that is what emphasizes your ship choice. You want suit lockers, you go for a specific ship over another. And overall, I think that helps to still make the game a quote unquote more hardcore experience that depends on your risk versus your reward, your pros and your cons, your choices of what you are choosing to fly or what you are choosing to use. But I agree, it should be made easy to use. And I was really hopeful that Starware was some name for a tool that would allow them to build us an easier equipment manager or a better way of using our inventory, something like what we used to have on the mobiGlas. I just don't I don't know, like I thought they would say something about that, especially considering they clearly put in that UI that the freight elevator used for the inventory as a placeholder, which they then removed and have now not said anything about, and that's blind spot for us, I think.
Yeah, same thing with like our subscriber flare. They kind of didn't mention that at all, and so we're still left waiting. Now they kind of hinted today that maybe their way around it is going to be that we craft our stuff, But
Yeah,
then I'm
I think
like,
that's what
why
it
do we have
is.
to work? Why do we have to work to craft? To go find the resources we need to craft these things that we've paid money for. If we, I don't know, but I don't know. That'll be a
I
whole
think
other thing.
subscriber flare should just be like warranted with high
Right?
level insurance, so you can easily get it back when you want.
Yeah,
But
that's what I think.
it does sound like it's going to be a blueprint focused thing.
Hmm. Yep, that's what
Um,
it sounds like.
all right. Last thing to talk about is Squadron 42, which I wanted to save until the end. But before we get into that, I did see a message in the chat that I want to acknowledge. Instanced fleet battles were mentioned for Star Citizen 1.0, along with
Hmm.
other things where they're using instances now here.
Yep.
Server meshing was kind of seen as a way to get away from instancing and allow the server to take, or the shard rather, to take load in different areas while still allowing everything to live in the same environment.
Hmm.
Instancing is seen as a way to allow pockets of gameplay that can't be interrupted by other people.
Hmm.
These were kind of competing philosophies that they're going to use in different ways together now. But
Hmm.
one of the most interesting ways it sounds like they're doing it is with fleet battles and instancing those.
Hmm.
So, do you think that these instance fleet battles will be something that anybody can get into? Or, like, do you think you could just be flying along and see that there's a fleet battle taking part, kind of like an Elite Dangerous, and just jump into that little pocket of gameplay?
I mean, I feel like they were hinting at this when they were talking about those little tiny jump points, because they kind of hinted that, oh yeah, you could jump. I think something clicked there where we're like, oh, you can, instead of jumping to pyro, you could jump to one of these little instances. So I kind of saw that those instances was the direction they were going to go. I thought it could be interesting if there's like, it gives them a way to set things up. Like they could have like, you could pop into like a little asteroid place, and they could already have like NPCs that are like, on certain asteroids and doing things or whatever. So I think in regards to that, I think it's a pretty good, it's a nice addition. I think it's good to have some things that are open world, like your sandworm, and then you're going to have things like that will be instance. You know, I'm not saying instancing is definitely the way to go for everything, or it's good or bad, but it does have its place, and I do look forward to it. I think it will be open for anybody, because it seems like most of the events they've done so far, they've been pretty open to just anybody to get in there and do, whether you're joining another crew or trying to participate yourself or whatever. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I would definitely like to see things that focus away from combat, even in the instancing. I think that every event they've done pretty much is mostly combat related, and I'd like to see them move away from that a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I definitely see it as something that'll be open for everyone.
I do certainly hope that if you see somebody flying across space and you jump to the same location they're jumping to, there's not like a complication of, oh, I ended up on a different instance than you. That's a
Yeah.
bummer. Because
Yeah.
that was kind of, I think, the magic of server meshing that people were looking forward to. And I wonder just how much of that they're going to need to use to keep the
Yeah.
game running smoothly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It'll be interesting.
all right. Squadron 42,
Mhm.
arguably the biggest part of the whole show. What did you think of the gameplay demo that they showed for Squadron at the end of day one?
Um, I'll preface this by saying I wasn't interested in Squadron 42. However, after watching it, it really made me interested, because the narrative of it was just so good. I've never played any of I'm not a big single player, so I really don't play a lot of games that are story driven. Even though my son's always telling me, hey, you would really love this story, you should play this game, and I'm just like, it's a lot of work, but watching that, and because I do know a lot about some of the lore, just from playing, and watching so many videos. It was really well done, to begin with. I think that it was pretty cool that they went live. I think it worked out better that they went live and showed the flaws and all, because at least if they had just done it pre-recorded, everyone would have been saying, oh, we wanted to see, that, it's, especially when they come out and said it'll be ready in 2026. If you're going to say it's ready in 2026, you need to show the flaws as to why. If they just showed a perfect video, people would have been like, why is it taking so long if it looks
Yeah,
this
that's a
good?
good
And
point.
I think there would have been questions there. But I definitely enjoyed what I saw. I was following along very closely, closer than I thought I would. It looked very interesting. I'll probably end up playing it because I did like what I saw. As far as how it ended, I know they were kind of let down by that, and I could see that. You could definitely tell. It just kind of it didn't. It just kind of like felt like the whole show just kind of ended abruptly at that point, and I felt like that could have been handled a little better. But ultimately, the whole thing about it coming out, in 2026, again, you'd rather see it be completely done than to come out with flaws. And, if it came out with flaws, they can't take that back. It's already got enough of a reputation as it is. Let it come out when it needs to be ready.
Yeah.
So.
It seems a lot of the gameplay focused criticism was around the turret portion of the game.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of that part?
I mean, I thought as I was watching it, I was like, the only thing I'll say negative about all of that part was the fact that you didn't do a lot. There was a lot of cutscene, and I know that's what he's supposedly known for, and I get it, but I did feel it sometimes like you were taken out of the game for too long. But as far as the turrets and stuff, it did. I mean, even though it was on really hard, I don't know if he's just really that good or whatever, but it did seem sort of easy. It seemed like somewhat not necessary. I'm curious to see what would happen if I played it versus him, or if it would play out any different, things like that. But, again, I know this is just a prologue. They're just trying to get you into the game. So, yeah.
I think it was very cutscene heavy, as you said. He's known for that. There are a couple of different game directors that are known for that in the industry. But this one, I found this one, I was sympathetic to it just because it was like a big battle, and it's hard to tell the story of all of that without just like dialogue, because there's like stuff happening on other spaceships and whatnot. But I do think that turret session, both the AI could have been a little bit better, and it maybe could have been a little bit shorter. But the FPS section, the on foot section, in my opinion, did, I think, a pretty decent job of showing different aspects of the game that can be expanded upon later. Very simple way of doing it, very prologue fitting to be like an introduction.
Tutorial.
Yeah. So I liked it quite a bit.
And the puzzle part of it too, having to jump from thing to thing. That was really interesting too. Yeah.
You say that, so you're kind of a convert almost then. You weren't really interested in Squadron before, but the gameplay demo turned you on to it? Exactly,
yeah. I was kind of shocked because, my wife had asked me, like, even, a few weeks back, she goes, "Are you going to play Squadron?" I was like, "No, I'm not going to play Squadron." I was like, And then she goes, "You probably should because, you cover the game enough and, it'd probably help with something." I was like, "Yeah, maybe. I just don't know if I can sit there and do it." But no, It was really interesting. I really enjoyed watching it. I was, I was really engaged with the story too. Like that was one thing that got me. So
you're not really that bothered by the 2026 date if you weren't that interested in it before?
No, the date didn't bother me. Dates don't bother me generally. I mean, there's been a couple times where it kind of like I was let down, like with salvaging, when salvaging kept getting pushed back. That was a letdown at times. But again, I got enough things to do where I'm just like, okay, I'll just, it just is what it is. So
yeah, I think it'll also help for that game to be released when Star Citizen's in a better place and can be something that's more performant to back up the gameplay of Squadron.
Yeah, that's a really good point because you don't want to attract all this attention to how Star Citizen is now, because we do get people that come in now, like when 323 went out, and they come in and they're like, "Okay, I'm going to move on to something else," and you know. So,
overall, though, I think it was a solid showcase of what the game is going for. Although I think what is particularly missed there is like this is a part of the game that's very much you in the rookie seat. You're not flying ships. You're not like getting combat time with advanced weaponry. You're not exploring and like moving around an area that you don't know. You're in the spaceship where you are literally stationed. So it's like there's a lot of intrigue and mystery and tension that I think is missing there. But it still did a great job with the storytelling, I think, of setting up the scene. And it helped me have more confidence.
Even when it jumps between, it did really good, segueing into things. When he got sucked out of that elevator, I was like, whoa, that was really cool.
Yeah. I think I'm more confident in the writing after that than I was going in, because I know the presentation is going to be great, but the gameplay and the writing is what I'm really looking forward to impress me. And the 0G segment, while it maybe was a little bit long, I think that was good gameplay. I think some of the Vandal stuff could have turned into more stealth. But ultimately, I was pretty satisfied. What kind of games do you normally play? You say you don't play much single player, but
yeah, I normally play like I started off with MMOs. I did like my very first MMO was like Lord of the Rings Online, and then I went into Star Wars Old Republic when it came out. I've played WoW Classic. ESO is a real big one for me. Played a lot of that, and then we got into survival games, so like Ark Survival Evolved, Conan Exiles, things like that. So yeah,
okay.
that's our main staple. That's where our base building and crafting comes into. So
yeah. Well, overall, what's your? I think I asked your opinion at the beginning of this about the whole CitizenCon. Again, just to wrap things up, what's your overall feelings? Are you like, wow, kind of feeling? Are you sort of down about it? Are you in the middle? What's your?
I think I'm in the middle about it. I think once again, I think I fell for some of the hype beforehand. Like, we've heard like,
They
Jared
were
say,
hyping it up a lot.
You don't want to miss this. This is the one you don't want to miss. And then I heard other content creators who were actually going to make the trip, and they made the trip because they didn't want to miss it. And I'm like, if I'd have made this trip this year, I don't think I would have been happy about it. If I'd felt like I fell for something a little bit. But again, I know the whole trip isn't just the news you're going to get; it's also the people you're going to meet and everything. So I know that's a big part of it. So that part would be cool because I'd love to go there. But yeah, overall, I'm happy with the news we got, especially about 1.0. I feel better about 1.0 than I did going into this because I was thinking, God, they're going to piss so many people off with because I was like, they're going to define certain features. That's what I had in my head. They're going to define certain features, what makes 1.0, but then they're going to leave some out. And even if they left out like exploration or science and things like that, I was thinking that would still be like a good DLC afterward, like their first big thing. They could do a whole exploration DLC or whatever. I know people would have been mad about that, but I'm glad that they are acknowledging what all will make up a 1.0, and it seems to include everything except for a lot of the things we don't know how they're going to do it. So, but yeah.
There's going to be a lot to go over in the next couple weeks as we remember stuff and go back through these videos and everything. So I am looking forward to extended discussions about this, but I'd like to thank you for joining me for this immediate summary after the fact of like just an hour ago it ended, and it's still really fresh in our minds. So thank you for joining me, Casablack. One last time, can you let everybody know where they can find your content and come hear what you have to say?
Yeah, you'll find my channel on YouTube, Casablack Gaming. I'm also at Twitter, so feel free to add me, follow me, and I'm always happy to talk about anything. So
cool. And thank you all again for watching this live. Thank you for joining me for the CitizenCon live broadcast. I will be with you again tomorrow for all the discussions. I will have a Citizen Central with you on Tuesday to talk more in depth about everything that has happened. And I will be having a special show this Friday on Launch Sequence with Luke Stevens to talk about the perspective of all this happening from the outside. So thanks again for watching the Launch Sequence, folks. Enjoy your time. I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.